والآن ندعو سعادة أمين عام الجائزة الدكتور عبد الوهاب زايد للتفضل بإلقاء كلمته. تفضل سيدي.
شكرا أستاذ عماد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين، أصحاب السعادة، زملائنا ضيوفنا الكرام، إخوة الباحثين والخبراء والفنيين المختصين بزراعة النخيل وإنتاج التمور والابتكار الزراعي، سعادة الأخ الدكتور عبد الله بن عبد الله الخبير الدولي في زراعة النخيل وإنتاج التمور، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. باسم الأمانة العامة لجائزة خليفة الدولية لنخيل التمر والابتكار الزراعي نرحب بكم جميعا أجمل ترحيب عبر هذه المنصة الافتراضية، وأنقل لكم كالعادة تحيات معالي الشيخ نهيان مبارك آل نهيان وزير التسامح والتعايش رئيس مجلس أمناء الجائزة. نرحب بكم في هذه المحاضرة الثانية ضمن سلسلة المحاضرات العلمية الافتراضية للموسم الثالث 2022، والذي يحظى باهتمام ودعم سموه. ونزولا عند رغبة السادة الزملاء الباحثين والأكاديميين والفنيين والمختصين، تتشرف الأمانة العامة للجائزة أن تطلق سلسلة من المحاضرات العلمية الافتراضية المتخصصة في مجال الزراعة النسيجية وإنتاج فسائل النخيل النسيجية وما رافقت هذه الصناعة من تحديات، حيث تعمل الجائزة على استضافة عدد من الخبراء والمختصين في هذا المجال على المستوى الإقليمي والدولي. ونتشرف أن نكون اليوم مع أحد الخبراء الدوليين الأخ الدكتور عبد الله بن عبد الله. وحرصا من الأمانة العامة للجائزة على تعميق الفائدة، نرجو من الأخ المحاضر والإخوة الحضور الابتعاد عن ذكر أسماء والعلامات التجارية للشركات والمختبرات المنتجة لفسائل النخيل النسيجية، لا بالسلب ولا بالإيجاب، لأن الجائزة مؤسسة علمية حكومية لا تهدف إلى الربح، كما لا تهدف إلى الترويج أو الإساءة إلى أحد، فنحن على مسافة متساوية من الجميع، متمنين أن نقضي جميعا وقتا مفيدا، وكالعادة نعيدكم إن شاء الله بالمزيد. والآن باسمكم جميعا نطلب من سعادة الأخ الدكتور عبد الله بن عبد الله تقديم محاضرته. أخي العزيز، معك 45 دقيقة، فلتتفضل مشكورا.
كل الشكر دكتور عبد الوهاب زايد، أهلا وسهلا، أمين عام جائزة خليفة الدولية. أولا اسمحوا لي أن أرحب بكم جميعا، واسمحوا لي أن أقدم لكم هذه المحاضرة. اسمحوا لي أن أقدم لكم طبعا المحاضرة بالإنجليزية. Soma clonal variation in date palm tissue culture. As you know, Soma clonal variation in plants that have been produced by plant tissue culture. This is the definition of Soma clonal variation. Have been produced by plant tissue culture and can be detected as genetic or phenotypic traits. You know, mechanism of Soma clonal variation could be by two aspects. It can be genetic heritable variation, which is normally pre-existing variation in the somatic cells of X plant, or can be caused also by mutation or other DNA changes. It occurs at high frequency. The epigenetic, this is the second variation or Soma clonal variation. It can be non-heritable variation, and it's called epigenetic. Variation coming from generated during tissue culture or caused by temporary phenotypic changes. It occurs at low frequency. You know, various types of mutation have been described in Soma clonal variation, including point mutation, gene duplication, chromosomal rearrangement, and chromosome number changes. The DNA methylation is also one of the aspects in this variation, and have also been implicated as possible mechanisms behind Soma clonal variation. Soma clonal variation in date palm plants can be permanent or temporary. Permanent if it's genetic and stable variation, or temporary if it's epigenetic variation. While the genetic variation in plants are fixed and difficult to be changed, epigenetic variation are unstable and mostly result from physiological changes. Plants with epigenetic variation normally recover with time once the causes of these physiological changes are removed. For the Soma clonal variation, sorry, I want to. For the Soma clonal variation, it can be caused or occurs in tissue culture from growth regulators when the auxins are very high, especially the 2,4-D. It can also it can occur also when the long period in the lab is observed and high number of subculture. It can occur also when the length of duration cultured tissue are kept. Other source of Soma clonal variation can be the genotypical nature of plants, the type of explants used in vitro process, especially the callus. And we all remember the discussion from the beginning during the 1987, 1988, 1989, together in Marrakesh, about what is the cause or what are the sources of the variation, and we all condemned at the beginning the somatic embryogenesis, but this is a discussion, and we will discuss it also. Condition of regeneration of the vitro plants, mother material, production protocol, personal capacity, laboratory condition, all these is involved in the creation of Soma clonal variation. Just to remind you, the date palm propagation can be for date palm through different methods. The first one is the seeds. We all know that it's not giving the conformity, and it's not really the way to propagate date palm. Propagation traditionally is done by offshoots, and this is a sure and conform way to propagate date palm. And then we have the in vitro techniques. So in vitro techniques and offshoots can give the conformity. Seeds cannot. And tissue culture techniques, we are using two kind of explant coming from immature inflorescence or apical zones, and two techniques, somatic embryogenesis and organogenesis. Just to remind all these, of course, somatic embryogenesis is going through different phase where we have the we must pass by a callus, or when it's indirect embryogenesis, but direct embryogenesis is suitable also for not having variability. We have the second phase is germination of somatic embryogenesis and the pre-acclimatation in vitro, all the process can take around 19 months. The type of callus, the stability of date palm as a species, because usually when we talk about callus, we talk about, we think about the variability, but for date palm, after all these years, we can think that date palm is one of the stable species for propagation by embryogenesis. Of course, we said 19 months going through embryos and having development of vitro plants. Then we have the organogenesis. Organogenesis is based on pre-existent buds, which is theoretically giving more conformity, but as I said, the discussion is still there. Are we really all the time going through the pre-existing embryos, or we have advanced embryos or tissue also, and is it really organogenesis 100%? This is another discussion we can have also. Now, recently also we are propagating date palm by through immature inflorescence, which is most of the case going through embryogenesis and giving also plants. Then you have the phase of propagation. And let me tell you that Soma clonal variation study is, we don't have a lot of studies on this aspect. But when I was chief technical advisor of FAO project in Namibia for date production support program, I had the opportunity to really to study this Soma clonal variation because Namibia is most of the plants are planted from tissue culture coming from different laboratories, and it's really an opportunity to see and to analyze the effect of Soma clonal variation. You can see here date palm coming from tissue culture in one of the plantation in Namibia. It's growing very well, producing very well. Barhi is producing very well also, and giving, we reached 300 kilo as an average of production per tree. Now Namibia is exporting barhi coming from tissue culture. But when I was there, I studied this date palm from 5 tissue culture laboratories. And to avoid, as Dr. Zaid said, to talk about the laboratories, we called them L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. And we analyzed 2 varieties, Barhi and Majhul. A total of around 4,000 date palm were inspected and analyzed palm per palm. What I can tell you is there is a low variation, and this variation is also having a low economic impact. To give you an idea about these, for example, is for Barhi, one of the plot is just 65 compared with 1,135 palms, and 22 from 1,478 palms. Soma clonal variation, on the other hand, in Majhul was a bit high, and it reached in an average of 11.86%. Here, it's to be mentioned that in Majhul plot, there was also a mixture of varieties received from the laboratories. Now, if we analyze the results, we have laboratories giving plants through embryogenesis and others from organogenesis. For embryogenesis, we have different laboratory, L1, L2, L3. You can see the difference. L3 is around 15% of variability, when L1 is only less than 2% of variability. For organogenesis, there is a lab where it's more than 15%, it's around 20%, and the other one is below 3%. Also, I had the opportunity as a member of Khalifa Award for the Festival of Sudan, and we, during all our visits to plantation, I saw really many Soma clonal variation around Khartoum in the plantation, and it's, for me, I estimated more than 20% of variability in these plants. Okay, what are the type or the kind of Soma clonal variation? The first one is failure of fruit set. This variation is, I think it's genetic, because all these plants, you can see here, it was from Barhi. It's every year like that. We did all we tried all our best for the for the pollination, for the kind of pollen, for all viability, etc. Pollination in different way, nothing. It's really to remove. It's a genetic, and it's a stable variation. This failure of fruit set give parthenocarpic fruits or sish, and you know that we have also a delayed, sometimes not the first one, but the second aspect is there is plants where you have delay of fruit set, and a lot of also of sish during the first years. Of course, this second aspect can recover after 10 years. We saw this, but the first one is really stable variation. You all know that this problem of pollination can be, or this siege can be caused by many factors. You can see here photos of pollen grain germination. The tube, pollinic tube, when it's going through the steel, it can have some problem. When you have in the female flower 3 carpels, only 1 carpel develops and give the fruit. This is a successful pollination. When you have the 3 carpels developing or 2 carpels, this is the traditional way we know you have siege. But for this problem of variation or Soma clonal variation, we observed multiple carpels, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6 carpels. And you can see here, this is a real problem, and it's a genetic variation. The second aspect is abnormal growth. The size of leaves and the size of carob is really abnormal. And it's تضخم, and it's another aspect of Soma clonal variation. This variation is, for me, is epigenetic, because we saw that after a few years, it recover, and the date palm come back to production. Not normally at the beginning, but then after reaching 8 to 9 years, it produces normally. You can see even the leaves, they are the double or the triple of the normal leaves. The other aspect is this growth in this is a genetic variation, because the leaves are going in all the direction, and there is no production. Other aspect is the dwarfism. This is a real problem, because many plantation we saw in different countries, there is this problem of dwarfism. It can be around 80%, 18%, or 24%. It depends on the variety. For example, for Barhi, we saw it 18%. For Khalas, it was 24%. But sometimes it's the whole plantation coming from the same lab. Other aspect of or other Soma clonal variation is the dryness of apical bud. Also, albinism of leaves. It means that the chlorophyll is not working, and there is no chlorophyll, no production of a chlorophyll. You can have also another aspect like off types carrying symptoms similar to black scorch, disease of Majhul. High number of offshoots without inflorescence. Is it really a Soma clonal variation? This is also to discuss. Twisted inflorescence. This is also an aspect we can see a lot in tissue culture plants. Soma clonal variation occurs because of, first, laboratory and personal protocol errors, nature of the explant, lab condition, techniques comes in a second level. This is what I think. And most of the commercialized date palm vitro plants are coming from somatic embryogenesis for the moment. Soma clonal variation was not really explored for organogenesis because of the short time for the date palm coming from organogenesis. The abnormalities of tissue culture derived date palms are in general of a small incidence, most of the case less than 5%, but for some laboratories more than 15%. With the worldwide increase of potential countries coming into commercial cultivation of date palm, tissue culture is certainly the most appropriate tool to provide these countries with their needs of date palm plants. It is highly recommended that enterprises working with this commodity develop a safe tool that guarantee a safe product to the end user. I think till now, the microsatellite technique is one of the best for the moment, but Is it guarantee? Could it guarantee the conformity? This is another question. One of the important recommendations of the last workshop held in Morocco was to continue the survey approach in order to well assess these abnormalities, and also to carry out an international feed evaluation. This is very important. But after 17 years and planting of thousands and millions of tissue culture date palm, we really need to think about an international feed evaluation. All this was prepared through different reference, of course, especially the proceeding of the international workshop on true to timeless, a work done in Pakistan by Mirani, Dr. Zaid, and all for morphological abnormalities in tissue culture derived date palm. Also Al-Khatib and Al-Wasil, and also my work in Namibia. And thank you very much.
شكرا دكتور عبد الله على هذا الأداء. والآن نفتح الباب والمجال للأخوة الحضور للمبادرة في سؤال المحاضر. دكتور نشوان، تفضل.
شكرا جزيلا، مساء الخير جميعا. الحقيقة عمل نوعي، وشكرا للأخ المحاضر والجائزة على هذه المبادرات النوعية. أنا الحقيقة لدي سؤال عام للحضور، وسعادة بروف الأخ الكبير دكتور زايد ربما يساعدنا في إيجاد حل لما أفكر فيه. الملاحظات العلمية والميدانية المشخصة مهمة جدا، وما أعرف أنا في تصوري مع احترامي للحيادية والمهنية العالية تتمتع بها الجائزة والمؤسسات العربية والدولية النظيرة، أنا أعتقد نحتاج أن نشير إلى بعض الظواهر لبعض الشركات من مبدأ النصيحة ومن مبدأ العلم ومن مبدأ يعني إشاعة الخير وتصويب الأخطاء، خاصة وأن الباحثين الخبراء يعني لديهم آراء ولديهم ملاحظات ميدانية مفيدة. فهل هناك، سؤالي ربما مقترح للأخ عبد الله كونه باحث ميداني ولديه ملاحظات من الميدان، وأيضا للبروف زايد والحضور الكريم، هل هناك آلية ممكن أن نستفيد من هذه المحاضرات أن نوصل رسائل سواء للشركات المنتجة أو الجهات المستفيدة؟ ونحن نعلم بأنه يعني أكثر من ثلثي نخيل العالم موجود في المنطقة، ونحن لا نملك التقنية الحقيقة from A to Z. شكرا جزيلا، وأشكركم على هذه الجهود الراقية.
شكرا دكتور نشوان. تفضل دكتور عبد الله، إلا إذا كان سعادة الأمين العام بريد يعقب الآن أم بالآخر.
مشتاق سامحني دكتور عبد الله. من الحضور معنا مشاركين علماء واصحاب مزارع وكذا من الهند، اندونيسيا وسريلانكا وباكستان. يجدر بنا لو سمحتوا ان الاسئله تكون بالانجليزي، بما ان المحاضره كانت بالانجليزيه حتى تكون الاستفاده عامه. شكرا. I have to translate what my dear colleague, friend, Dr. Nashwan just mentioned. He wants more clarity. He wants to see more clarity on a relationship between who's doing what and so on in regard to these abnormalities, if any, depending on the laboratories or companies dealing with it. I will come back to that, but I just translated his Excellency question, and now the floor is open. Please go ahead, Dr. Abdullah.
Thank you. I think I will let you answer the part of the question concerning the laboratory, etc., to name the laboratory or to nominate the laboratories. But for me, the important thing is really to see how together we can work to see in the field in different countries what is the statement of the tissue culture plants now during the last 10 years. It's very important. And also to see if there is a tool, important tool to be sure about the conformity of the plants from the beginning. This is the two aspects.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور عبد الله. في الدكتور عبد الله وهابي ايضا من بين الحضور اللي رفعوا يدهم مبكرا. تفضل سيدي دكتور عبد الله وهابي.
Thank you very much. I think that Dr. Ashraf was the first one to raise hand. Then let him go in first, and then I will follow. Thank you. I'm sorry. Unless you want me to go, huh? I have no problem with that.
Dr. Allah, thank you so much for this note. Actually, first of all, congratulations for everybody. Welcome back from Eid Adha Mubarak. I'd like to thank also the Professor Abdul Wahab for the nice and the quite good start for the upcoming series of virtual presentation by talking about this kind of tissue culture. Actually, the presentation of Dr. Abdullah is really quite good, very impressive, and we learned a lot from it. My question to Dr. Abdullah here is, what about the medium long-term perspective of tissue culture in our region, putting in consideration that we are now implanting quite good number of millions of dead palm in our region, and the normal way of getting fasila or fasail will be highly in a big number. What do you think about investment in such tissue culture from medium to long term in our region, putting in consideration that the capital required for such kind of investment is huge? Thank you so much.
تفضل دكتور عبد الله.
Thank you for your question, Dr. Ashraf. My opinion is that tissue culture is a good way to you remember till now the expansion of date palm is due to tissue culture, and we cannot produce, or we cannot find a big number of offshoots from a specific variety if you don't pass by through tissue culture. Tissue culture is needed, and it's important. The Soma clonal variation we are talking about is small. For me, it cannot stop our believing in tissue culture.
Thank you. Doctor, next please, Dr. مصطفى آيات شيت.
خلاص أنا ما عاد أتكلم.
يلا انتصرتك.
لا كله إلا مصطفى. كله إلا مصطفى الشيت.
أنت تنازلت عن حقك.
انتصرتك بعدين.
شفت كمان كان راح لك بلاصتك. يلا تفضل سام تفضل.
Yes, thank you. Just what I want to say is the program of Namibia in which we all work at this. It started with Dr. Zayed, then from 1995 to 2000, then I took over until 2003, and then Dr. Abdullah took over from 2004 to 2007. And there it was a really good field to do these studies, and also to see the behavior of plants coming from different laboratories. And here we can see from my own conclusion is that the problem is not coming from the technique itself. The problem is not coming from the tissue culture techniques, but it's coming from laboratories. I remember the conference organized by Dr. Zaid in 2000, and one of the main problems at that time was the problem of Verhi. Dr. Abdullah bin Abdullah talked about it right now. And the laboratory, unfortunately, I cannot say, I am the one who wants to say names, but I will follow recommendations of Dr. Zahid. The manager of the laboratory who was at the origin of the problem at that time was invited. Dr. Zahid invited him, and he was confronted by this problem and discussed it with him. And he could not how can I say it? He could not justify the situation, or not to present, to convince the participants in the Congress that the problem is not coming from its laboratory. We suffered from that in Namibia. Berhi was planted, as I said, during the period of where Dr. Zaid was there, and I arrived there until 9 years after planting that Berhi started producing. They mean that there was a problem and it was known. He talked, Dr. Abdullah talked about the 2,4-D. He was excess of 2,4-D in the plantation, in the plants, etc. And until after 9 years, he starts producing. The photos that Dr. Abdullah showed on Berhi, this is the photos I took in 2002 when we started really producing about 250 kilograms by tree. I saw the same problem. I was in 2000 in Iran with private date producer. He had also the same problem with Berhi, coming from the same laboratory. Last year they told me that it starts producing. Then, and also that the field in Namibia, we did studies, we had majhul coming from different laboratories. And we saw that there are laboratories who are very known laboratories to us. Dr. Zaid knows them very well also. These laboratories, some of them, these are laboratories who were presenting problems. The numbers provided by Abdullah bin Abdullah, and I'm sure that he's talking about the same laboratories. That's where we have this abnormal development of the date palms, etc. Others are giving good results. And as I said, we organized with the Date Palm Global Network in 2006, the workshop on tissue culture. And here also that where we will present different countries in the region. And here also the results is that the problems we are seeing and these Soma clonal variations, etc., were far way less than 5%. Then yes, the tissue culture is not, the technique itself is not the problem, but the problem is coming from laboratories. And we saw as answer to our doctor, or just to complete what Dr. Anouchwan was talking about, Morocco actually planted around 3 million date palms, and they are all coming from tissue culture. But Morocco chose to use the organogenesis technique. And I don't think that there are, Dr. Rachid, in his last presentation, he talked about few variations observed on the field, but they are very minimal. Thank you very much.
شكرا. تفضل دكتور عبد الله.
No comment.
بدون تعليق. طيب تمام.
I agree with him.
تمام. بنعطي المجال الدكتور يوسف من المملكة العربية السعودية.
بل نسيتني إذا أستاذ أيمن.
لا ما نسيتك.
أوكي.
ما نسيتك دكتور آيات شيت. دكتور يوسف دوليقان تفضل. مستشار معالي الوزير في المملكة العربية السعودية. تفضل. ميوت حضرتك، افتح الخط من عندك. بسم الله.
السلام عليكم. سأتكلم بالعربي في البداية ثم أسأل سؤالي بالإنجليزية. أول شيء أنا أشكركم على هذه المحاضرة القيمة، وأشكر الدكتور عبد الله، وأنا سعيد أن أكون مع نخبة من علماء في هذا المجال، خصوصا بالعالم العربي الذي نفتخر فيه، وأيضا الحديث عن واحدة من أهم المحاصيل وهي نخلة التمر والتي نحبها كذلك. أنا الحقيقة أعمل مستشار لوكيل وزارة البيئة والمياه والزراعة في المملكة السعودية، وأيضا المشرف العام على مختبرات زراعة الأنسجة في الوزارة، وإحنا نعمل في النخيل وغير النخيل حقيقة من الفواكه، ومركز في عملنا على المايكرو بروباغيشن بصورة محددة تقريبا، يعني معظم محاصيل البستانية لدينا. As I said, I will talk in English now. As I said, I am glad to be here, and it's a pleasure for me to be with these pioneer groups. As for the Soma clonal variation, it's a very important issue. And I have, in fact, many questions, and I thank the speakers and Dr. Abdul Wahab Zayed and Dr. Abdullah and others for this nice talk and data that they presented. But I will go only for two questions and one suggestion, if you don't mind. Based on what Dr. Abdullah said and what we know, which procedure he would believe it's better for micropropagation? Is it embryogenesis or organogenesis? And the other question is the percentage of Soma clonal variation. I mean, each one has said something. In which procedure is more? I mean, I've seen the data. Sometime he said the percentage with different labs, and also he said about the even from organogenesis up to 15%, but I'm not sure if this is an accurate percentage. And the other suggestion, please, I am just because this problem has been raised for many years. What if the group either any the committee of the tissue culture people has established like a field, I'm not saying trial, but like orchards, I'm sorry, in different countries, and selected number of trees from Soma clonal variation, embryogenesis procedure and organogenesis from different labs, and leave this for many years. I mean, even if after 20 years or even more, other people can follow and just come up with conclusion, hopefully by the end. Thank you once again. I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf. Fadal, Dr. Abdullah.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf, for this number of questions. You asked the first question about the techniques, embryogenesis or organogenesis. This is really an old discussion. Our colleagues in Morocco know that we did have a lot of discussion before, at the beginning of the 1818 till 1890 year. So we were discussing with Per Bouchen. He was convinced that no embryogenesis at all. We should work on organogenesis, that's it. So we did spend a lot of time working on organogenesis, and at the end of the day, let me tell you that after all these years, I think that the problem is not the technique. The two techniques can give really good results, but the problem is the laboratory. Is the personnel, is the environment in the laboratory, is the mistakes, is the high concentration used, etc. This is the problem. Embryogenesis, you know that the embryogenesis is giving more. I mean, the rate of propagation or multiplication is high compared with organogenesis, and also. Of course, Aichit can correct me if it's wrong. Also, we need more and long time compared with embryogenesis to reach plants. This is the difference. But in the other side, we know that the more we go to organogenesis, the more we are a bit in the safe side for the conformity. Let's say this is theoretically what we think and what is the reality. The second question is about, you said different plants how to evaluate. This is what I concluded also, saying that 10 years now or more, 20 years of planting date palms coming from tissue culture. We know the damage if there is variation, or if there is a lab propagating bad material, or there is a mistakes, or there is also mixture in the acclimatation, etc. In my opinion, your suggestion is not practical, because if you will put palms coming from different laboratories and follow during 10 years, this is not really feasible. What is feasible now is to at least make, as I said, a statement of what is in the field. And we need an international instance having the possibility to evaluate and really to publish. Why not the good laboratories and the labs to avoid for tissue culture? This is what I think.
شكرا دكتور عبد الله على الإجابة المطولة. نأمل أن تكون الإجابات مختصرة كي نتيح للعدد أكبر من الحضور. دكتور مصطفى آيات شيت، تفضل.
شكرا
مختصر وإجابة مختصرة، تفضل.
شكرا أخي عماد. شكرا دكتور عبد الله. This is a very interesting topic and subject actually, and because it's the big discussion about tissue culture and Soma clonal variation. So I'll try to be very brief. What is interesting is the conclusion that Dr. Abdullah come out with, is that the problems are more to do with the labs than the technique, that overall the variation is very low, and that TC plant is still the best way to go. So yes, I agree completely, and you can see it. I mean, you take the same technique, but with different labs, and you go from less than 3% to more than 15%. And actually, I might say the analysis and the study in Namibia might be biased a bit, because I can guess where the problem is with the 15%, because I can guess where that plant were coming from. But just to answer the question of several people, including Dr. Abdullah, the solutions do exist. We have solutions to solve this kind of problems. And one of the first thing to do is, like I presented in my presentation, is to have a real traceability, whatever the lab is. If any lab does not have a good traceability, he cannot ensure that the production is good. And traceability, it's a process. It's a way of doing things. It cannot be done just, you know, in any way you think. There is a way to do the traceability system from the offshoot that you are taking up to the production of the plant that you are delivering to the farmer. That's the first thing, traceability. Second thing, DNA analysis. Like Dr. Abdullah said, we have a very powerful tool with microsatellites. But again, it depends how you do that analysis. I see a lot of labs pretending to do DNA analysis, and they have nothing to do with DNA analysis, because the way they are doing it is completely wrong. So if you got a good traceability system, and if you do your DNA analysis in a good way, then at the end of the day, you can certify that the plants you are having are true to type, and you can give them safely to the producer. And we can go into more details if we have time. Thank you very much.
شكرا دكتور مصطفى. تفضل دكتور عبد الله اذا عندك تعقيب.
لا انا I agree, no problem.
اوكي تمام. نعطي المجال دكتور ريفيشاندران. Please start.
Good evening. I have some questions with you. Actually, I was sent in the mail, the message also. Why can't we control the centralized control system can be possible with the barcode system? I would like to know that, because seeing that a lot of things coming from Morocco, which is giving the high quality, which is having the properized system, which is already mentioned by Dr. Mustafa Yachi. So is it like just like a WHO, which is controlling the public health system like this? Can we control the overall date palm system so that everybody will farmers going to be get benefited actually? Still, some people, local people are getting plants which is produced through seeds. Then after 5 years, farmers are facing very big problem in the different countries. So my first point will be, is it possible to go for the centralized control system for date palm seedling supplies? Second will be, which is the easy and the best DNA, maybe the molecular techniques can we go to detect this type of the Soma clonal variation other than the microsatellite? Is it any other possibility will be there, please? And there's a third question I have, which is the final question. What will be the difference if you produce the plants through Soma clonal, maybe somatic embryogenesis or organogenesis? What will be the difference in what you are going to get benefit? Because maybe, yes, of course, we know this organogenesis and the somatic embryogenesis going to give the good quality plants if you have the properized techniques actually. But are we going to get any benefit by using these two different methods because of maybe saving our time or producing more number of plants? So this is the question I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Abdullah, تفضل.
Thank you. One of the question was clonal fidelity issue. Can we, from the beginning, be sure that the plants we will produce will be conform or not? We didn't reach yet in the research and the possibility now, because this is normally it's a joint action of research. It should be done between molecular genetics and tissue culturists and anatomists, many together. But unfortunately for date palm, it was not really done till now. This is your question. I think it's not easy to be sure from the beginning that we will produce really something conform 100%. But traceability, as Dr. Aichit said, is one of the tools between our hand to really to be in the safe side. I think this is one of the questions. The second question was why going to organogenesis when we know that embryogenesis is giving also a lot, etc. As we said, the risk of variability or Soma clonal is more for embryogenesis. But anyway, this is let's say a choice to make from the one working in the lab. It depends of the labs. I don't know the other question. I cannot recall, but I don't know if I answered all your questions.
The best way to detect this DNA test to checking this Soma clonal variation. Sorry. Which is the easiest way to detect this type of Soma clonal variation?
I cannot hear you. I don't know.
I can send you the message here.
No problem. Send message please.
Yes.
المهندس أنور حداد تفضل نختم بسؤال حضرتك تفضل.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for the Khalifa Award and for the speaker, Dr. Abdullah. Since most of us agree with what Dr. Wahabi says and about the responsibility of the laboratories rather than the responsibility of the technical part of producing these tissue cultures, do we think that there should be a governmental responsibility or a body international? Maybe we may call for realization of establishment of an international or international organization or body who are responsible for the for not certification those labs. No, I'm talking about the final produce of the since we are talking about big investments. You are talking about 15%, Dr. Abdullah. 15% of the produce may have this kind of mutation. If we evaluate it, this could be in billions, or especially when we are seeing there is a lot of expansion in data and tissue culture use not only in dates, in all varieties and kinds of orchards and trees and plants. So may Dr. Zaid, may the Khalifa Award maybe take the initiative, call for this establishment of such a body like the Global Gap, like the certification or accreditation body to get sure that all these labs are following standardization. It's a matter of standardization of this produce. I may, this is my suggestion. This could be a governmental responsibility or an international body establishment. Thank you very much.
سوري، شكرا أستاذ أنور على هذه المداخلة. ونختم جلستنا اليوم بكلمة لسعادة الأمين العام دكتور عبد الوهاب زايد، فليتفضل مشكورا.
I think because of the nature of our audience, we will end up using English. I think for most of you who followed the first presentation given by Dr. Mustafa Al-Sheed, today's presentation, and 3 or 4 more to come in the same field, you will end up with a clear idea of what's going on the market. You will end up with a clear idea of what's going on in the field of the date palm modern industry. I'll give you just, we are at the second, I repeat, we are at the second conference, virtual conference, and big highlights. It's been cited by all my dear colleagues who had the floor before. It's there is first a low percentage of this variation, whatever it is, first. And whenever it's less than 2 or 3%, it should be acceptable anyway. That's one. 2, the reason behind it is the lab day-to-day activities, approach, the way they prepare, the media they are using, blah, blah, blah. But the technique itself, it's safe, whatever we are talking about. And the third approach is tissue culture is the right way to go. Here I would like to open a parenthesis, and I am saying this as a scientist, not as a Secretary General of Khalifa Award. When you have a country with a large program of several million trees to be planted, it will be safe 100% if you use tissue culture material. And here you all know that why is I am giving this recommendation and underlying it and writing it in bold. First, because of the propagation of pests and diseases. I know some area in the world now, they introduce offshoots from everywhere. That's wrong. I am saying it loudly, it's wrong. Second, they will face a big dilemma, big problem. Some of the offshoots will not be majhul or whatever variety they were paying for. Okay? And third, their field, which is supposed to be a commercial plantation, will not be uniform. And they have to go and replant every year for 4 or 5 years until 10 years. Then they will have maybe something uniform. So tissue culture is the right way. So as you can see now, these are the big lines. Traceability. Traceability, as well explained by our dear friend, Dr. Mustafa, in last conference. And this traceability is based on logistics, based on coordination, based on a network within the country, and based on using scientific method for true to typeness, DNA. I think the only country in the world now using such approach is Morocco. I want just to clarify to people overseas who are dealing with tissue culture, you cannot sell a plant in Morocco to the private sector or to government program unless you have a certificate from one of the important body of the Ministry of Agriculture. This fact is based on a long chain of coordination from the time you take the offshoot all the way to the time the truck comes to take thousands of tissue culture plants to the field. There are several steps of control and follow-up and coordination and so on and so on. So traceability, the barcode system is available also. Another thing very important is when tissue culture is taken wrongly. I was in one of the countries two weeks ago. I had a great meeting with His Excellency Minister of Agriculture, and he's well aware of tissue culture, its importance and so on, but nobody told him that his ministry has forbidden tissue culture to be imported from Morocco. You see, because of biodisease. Biodisease, it is in the plantations, but it does not exist within the test tube of tissue culture. When a tissue culture plant is produced, date palm is free of disease and pest, except viruses if you don't do the micrografting. But anyway, the text is clarified. We were able to solve this in Iraq, thanks to the Iraqi people, colleagues, and they solve it. Now they are importing tissue culture material from everywhere, including Morocco, but also now we are trying with another country in the region. So one thing important here is the clarification was, I like what has been presented by our dear colleague, Dr. Abdullah bin Abdullah. Your conference has been attended by an average of 60 scientists, people from 18 countries. And to be fair in this presentation, the countries are below: Qatar, Pakistan, Libya, Tunisia, Sri Lanka, Egypt, Sudan, KSA, Canada, Indonesia, India, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Jordan, Algeria, Syria, Spain, and Morocco. I hope I did not forget any country. So there are 18 countries represented by 60 scientists who attended this conference. I would like to thank all of you who spent almost 70 minutes with us. So I'll hope to see you soon in the next conference within 2 weeks. However, you are kindly requested, if any of these honorable scientists could propose either him or herself, or propose somebody who has some great knowledge in the field we've been talking to, he or she are more than welcome to present a presentation. Okay, you coordinate with Khalifa Award people, Mr. Ahd and Mr. Imad, and we will take it from there. So again, have a nice evening. Thank you very much. Mr. Imad, the floor is yours.
شكرا جزيلا سيدي. إلى أن نلتقي بكم في الجلسة الحوارية الثالثة للموسم الثالث 2022. نستودعكم الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا. السلام عليكم.
شكرا جزيلا للجميع بدون استثناء.